Good day, everybody. We've got Chris Hanna on with us I say this morning. Depends on where you're watching this. Could be morning, could be afternoon, but for us, it's here in the morning. So, Chris, how you doing this morning?
I am doing great, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. And so, Chris Hanna owns Walnut Hill Medical, and he's going to tell us, of course, what that means and what they do and all those good things throughout our interview today. And of course, we'll have some other questions for Chris, and he'll tell us some of his real life stories with his real life business and hopefully help a lot of the other folks listening continue to get more and more information about what real people are doing with their real businesses and how we can maybe solve some different challenges that he's seen and all the kinds of good stuff. So, without further ado, Chris, maybe you could tell us briefly about the company. If you could please introduce us to the company and tell us what problems you guys solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sean. And quite apropos that a siren I heard just pass in the background.
Yeah. Was that planned?
Walnut Hill Medical. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, Walnut Hill Medical, we're a consulting firm here in Dallas, Texas, that really what we do is we help medical device innovators break into the US market and stay there. US market for healthcare, as you can imagine, extremely challenging, extremely complex, not only to get into the market, but then remain viable and sustainable in the market. So we do that. We primarily focus on US health policy and reimbursement. So all the insurance pieces, as well as congressional legislation, state legislation, and then of course, prior authorization, which for, if you're not familiar with what that is, most insurance carriers require prior authorization before you can get particular surgeries. So we spend a lot of time getting you into the market and keeping you in the market.
Yeah, that sounds great. I know most of us are not, insurance specialists, or we don't go through the process probably of having to, deal with insurance companies or make sure that whatever we're doing, maybe from a business, relates to, or setting us up for success with, for example, dealing with insurance companies. And so I'm sure what you do is highly valuable and sought after, of course, to some degree, when folks are like, hey, I had all this revenue that I thought I was going to bring to my business, but then, insurance didn't accept it, or they didn't, there was these issues, and all of a sudden that revenue is gone. Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sure that's some of what you, of course, you sounds like you help people with. And
We do. Yes,
yeah,
it can be
so
extremely challenging. As you can imagine, as administration changes at the highest levels of government and then at the state level, different programs implemented, other programs removed. You can imagine what it means for patients at the end of the day trying to get particular procedures done for them can be really challenging. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's the other piece that again makes it pretty valuable. Of course, from a business perspective, hey, I want to make sure if I'm going to be charging these things and doing services for clients that I can collect revenue and I can get reimbursed and all kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can't get those things, then guess what? Your clients, your patients can't get served, and it's like then nobody wins. So yeah, like you said, also of course super valuable to the patients. So so
Right.
props to you guys for taking on that challenge. Um,
It's, I wonder why we do this, but yes, some years
yeah,
more challenging than others, but for sure.
yeah. So, so do you have much competition? If so, maybe what makes you guys unique? What is it about you guys that's unique, or unique in just doing it yourselves? Like, how does that work?
Sure. I'll start with to kind of give some clarity on our differentiator goes back to why I started this business in the first place. So for the last 20 years, I have been involved with medical devices, launching either medical device companies or specific medical devices themselves. And so like here's a pacemaker, right? So you can, I don't know if you can see that, right? A
Yeah.
pacemaker. So lots of devices like that. And over the years, I saw so many therapies not be able to get on market because they were lacking something. Just like launching any company, if you don't have enough money or people or product, all of those different things, obviously it may not work out. So I saw that. And then when you're on the market, you may have other competitors coming in, or therapies change or policies change, and then I would see therapies go by the wayside. So after looking at all of these therapies sitting there, I thought, man, with just the right ingredients, we actually could make this successful. And so I started this company a little over 5 years ago. and we have helped dozens of medical device innovators launch their therapies. Now, what we focus on is not, well, I'll put it this way. For those of you who don't know, reimbursement, that is how much the insurance carrier is willing to reimburse the hospital and the doctor for providing a particular therapy. And so that piece makes the insurance company really one of your customers, right? And so when we focus on bringing new and innovative therapies to market, you can imagine that insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare Advantage, the private payers, they kind of have what they're doing with the current standard of care. And to bring in something brand new takes a while for them to internalize it and make a decision to pay for it. And so where we've seen people fail is, let's move this part earlier in the process so that we can make sure that you have everything you need when you go to the insurance carriers. But it's more than that. When you look at how much are you going to charge for this device to a hospital? Well, how much is insurance reimbursing them for a device, right? They've got to make margin.
Yeah.
The doctor, how much does it cost the doctor to do the surgery, right? So they've got to be able to make money. So you look at all of these pieces, that financial end, it all goes without saying that whatever therapy we represent would be beneficial to the patient, but we focus on the back end financial sustainability. And everybody, the company, meaning the medical device company, the doctor, the hospital, all need to be able to make a margin sufficient for them to stay in business. And of course, the insurance carrier does as well. And so what we do is we look at the entire scope of a medical device company bringing it to market. What's your supply chain? How much does making this pacemaker cost? How much do you have to pay in sales reps? What types of commission? Are there any shrinkage of inventory or waste? There's all of those things to consider to make sure everybody has a sustainable margin. And that's how we kind of pull reimbursement into the kind of the whole sphere of thinking when it comes to launching these companies.
Yeah, so many stakeholders, and you mentioned, when something's new, even insurance companies, like they have to assess and say, okay, what's our risk, and how, what percentage of the times are we not going to get paid? They do their sort of risk analysis to see, hey,
Right.
what can we viably charge and still make money, as you said. So yeah, and that's just one of the stakeholders, albeit an important one. But yeah, so many stakeholders. Everyone, of course, is in business to make money. Otherwise, we won't be in business very long. So all those factors you guys help people figure out and make sense of. So yeah, I can only imagine if you don't do this on a daily basis, like how much longer would that take you to figure that stuff out, or if you can figure it out at all. So yeah,
Right.
super useful. And so you mentioned obviously kind of like how and why basically you started. You'd seen some of the instances and say, hey man, this looks like an issue challenge out there. So you've been more or less wanted to help, move that path forward. What's been the hardest thing? You mentioned you've had the company, I think 5 years, you said, right?
That's correct.
So in 5 years, what's been the hardest thing you've been through, and how did you overcome it?
It's, I would say we've had two things. One is people. We can talk about that in just a moment. But when I think about health policy, which is where we spend the majority of our time, I would say this, it's really the prior authorization process. And some folks call it the weaponization of prior authorization. And I understand both sides. Insurance companies want to make sure that only the appropriate patients get a particular therapy. Doctors want to really push the therapy. And so sometimes they may go beyond what the insurance company agrees to. So you can imagine, there's this built-in conflict that happens and we get right in the middle of it. I would say if you're not familiar with Medicare Advantage, you see the commercials are out there all the time, right? You can have traditional Medicare or Medicare Advantage. And Medicare Advantage is basically private payers that offer Medicare services, plus maybe drugs and dentist and wellness and those types of things. And Medicare Advantage has to follow all the rules of Medicare, okay? But sometimes they misinterpret what Medicare's intentions were. And so we had a situation last year where one of our clients had a very, very big problem with one of the Medicare Advantage payers. And so we ended up taking them to court many, many times last year. And so we spent...
How fun.
Yeah. So we went many times, we'll put it that way, to court, and we won the vast majority of those cases. And it took a year to convince that payer that what they were doing was, I'll just say, incorrect.
Hmm.
And ultimately, they clarified their policy to agree that that therapy should be covered. And ultimately that was successful. Everybody, walked away going, "This is fantastic." But it took a year of
Yeah.
dedicated effort by a number of people and at great expense to
Hmm.
convince that payer to see it the way all the other payers saw it. Every other payer was reimbursing and paying and covering for this therapy, except for this one payer. So over that year, all of those patients, you can imagine, we only take a small percentage to trial because it's very expensive, and some patients don't want to do that. And so, thinking about the past 12 months, what the number of patients who never got that therapy because this payer denied it and they just gave up. And that was really sad to see. But we did get the policy change for people in the future to be able to get access to that therapy, which was great. So it came
Yeah.
down to persistence and knowing U.S. health policy. And I can't say it's the most exciting to people. I find it exciting because once you really understand how the regulations work, then you understand why the government set it up the way they did and how you can appeal denials and fight those denied claims. And we were ultimately successful. And so my client was happy, the patients were happy, and we were, of course, happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Persistence. I feel like that's one of the more key characteristics needed for success in really a lot of things, business, of course, included. But how many times someone tries something, it doesn't work. You go the second time, works a little bit better, but doesn't work. Go the third time, fourth time, and typically it takes that sort of multiple iteration or that persistence, as you said, to get to the finish line. And obviously, that's what you guys were able to do. But without the persistence, don't get there. Like you don't get across the line, and then it ends up being, I wouldn't say wasted effort because it's maybe you learn some things from it, which is always good, but you don't ultimately get where you want to go. So yes,
It's
persistence.
I'll add that I ask everybody that works for me, and even when I'm interviewing people to come work for me, I ask for their persistence in challenging me. So many people are afraid to question the boss, right? And I get that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I beg them, please don't stop questioning me, challenging me, because I come up with these ideas as the founder of this company. I can go this direction or this direction or that direction, and I need people giving me honest, critical feedback so that we get to the right answer. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter to me who comes up with the right answer. I just want us to come up with the right answer. And so I don't want people who are afraid to speak up just move down a path and go, "I knew that wasn't going to work," right? But you know,
Yeah.
and so I have my persistence, and every day I get up and just, it's okay. Let's try this today. Let's keep going. So keep showing up. As we tell our kids, show up on time, be prepared, just keep going. Don't stop. Get up when you get knocked down. I ask the same of all of my employees. It doesn't matter where you are in the company. If you feel like something isn't working or you have a better idea, please bring it up. I will change in 2 seconds if it's a better
Mhm.
idea. So
Yeah.
I ask everybody to have that persistence, especially with the vision of the company.
Yeah, critical. I think it's Lancioni that says one of the five dysfunctions is lack of conflict. And so he's like, yeah, there is healthy conflict, right? And that's going to be like what you're talking about. Hey, challenge me, right? Let's have a discussion. Let's argue or discuss, and eventually get to hopefully a better answer. Is that's
Right.
the whole objective. So, but you can't get there without some discussion or argue. I say arguments, but healthy arguments, right? So discussion,
Agreed.
maybe a better word.
Yep.
So good for you. So talking about team, what's been the hardest, or I guess what's been the biggest learning you've had maybe as an employer over these last several years?
Yeah, as an employer, I'd say one, just learning that I'll say one of the challenges coming to my mind of learning that I am responsible for a group of people, right? That was a shift for me. And it wasn't hard. It was just a different perspective of it's not just me. I now have people counting on me, kind of like my family. So there was that shift, which was fine. I welcome that. The piece that really has been the most challenging is hiring the right people. That has been the key. And everybody here watching this knows that when you're interviewing people, they're going to say what they think you want to hear, right? And so totally get that. For us in a consulting environment, everybody's in sales. Every single person, every time we talk with a client, you are always in sales. And so I was hiring kind of people with experience in health policy, and some would work out, some wouldn't, and I get it. And then when I brought on my president about a little over a year ago, I said, I want you to evaluate everything and then let's have a conversation. And part of what he said about people was, we need to hire more sales focused people. And I said, I know that. I understand that. Just where do I find them? He goes, anywhere but health policy, right? We can teach people health policy, but we can't teach them that sales mindset. We can't give them the courage, to pick up the phone and call somebody rather than text, right? We can't teach that. We can encourage it, but if it's just not in their heart, we can't get through that. So Chris, his name's Chris as well, he started going way outside the box and looking for people. And I remember he brought this one lady on, and her background, and you'll laugh, she worked, it wasn't a Starbucks, but it was something similar. She worked at a coffee shop, and she has proven to be one of our best employees, because at that coffee shop, she had the highest sales, she had the highest customer satisfaction reviews, everything. And she was growing new things within that company. And she just wanted a chance to prove herself in a different industry. And so when we came across her, she just knew how to interact with people, create relationships, have conversations. And she has a proven track record of delivering. She has been one of the most amazing people on our team, because she just gets people and understands how to give them what they need to be successful. It's worked out phenomenally. And so we've really expanded looking at the right personality to fit our environment, not necessarily the technical knowledge. We've got all of that. We can teach that to you. But again, I can't motivate people to get on the phone or get in the car or get on a plane to go meet people. And maybe that's the old school philosophy, but it works. And you can't create relationships via text. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, we talk about that kind of stuff all the time. Of course, hire the person, train the skill. And I think it sometimes is a little counterintuitive, like you're saying, like, I got someone, they got to have the knowledge of our industry. Otherwise, how are they going to have these conversations? But I also think people discount how you can learn that knowledge. I mean, hey, it's great if they already come in with it, but what's more important, as you're saying, is, well, they have to have those sort of, if it's the type of person we need and want, like they have the mindset, or they have the innate sort of wantingness to go do these things, then great. We can channel the information, right? We can train the information, but you can't train, like you said, those kind of underlying things. And so, like I said, I feel like it's a little counterintuitive, but once you get, those types of people on board, you're like, hey, that wasn't so hard. Or that worked out pretty well. So, yeah, definitely a difference maker. What about if you were going to start over? So it's been 5 years. You've obviously had varying levels of success. Sounds like you now have a president on board for the last year. So you've gotten places, done some good things. If you were to start over today, what would you do different?
What really comes to mind is investors. I wouldn't say it wasn't dead. I mean, we took on equity to grow the company. But from the beginning, I've always been cash flow positive. Everything has been profitable. Everything's been great. And I did not want to take on investors. I didn't want to have to report to a board and put all of that stuff together. I love the freedom and brainstorming and all of those types of things. And I ended up mid last year raising a good bit of money to help grow the company, and we've grown substantially, and took on a couple of board members. And we actually just had our recent board meeting just a couple of weeks ago. And I wish I had done it sooner, because the people on the board are so interested in helping us be successful that it really feels more like a partnership than, reporting to a board. And they are wide open. Anything we can do to help you, just tell us, call us. And they make time for me, and we have conversations, and we have hired people. We have grown over this past year tremendously. And I wasn't mentally ready the first few years. I just wasn't there. And when I brought on Chris, my president, he's become such a good partner, and he convinced me that, Chris, Hanna, if you raise money, then I will do all of these things. And I said, okay, if you feel confident that we'll do that. So I think I had kind of that partner, helping to convince me. And when I raised money, he executed on all of those things. And so I'm like, oh man, I wish I had done this earlier, but I wasn't ready. But you know what I mean? It was the right time to do what I did. But if I were to do it again, which, God, please, I hope I don't ever have to do this again. I just want this to be my forever company.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I would look into that a little bit quicker.
So maybe real quick, expand if you could on when you say you weren't ready. What about you wasn't ready, or what wasn't the right time?
I would say I've always had an entrepreneur mindset, and I've been in small companies. I think it was, as this is my company, it was, I needed to feel comfortable with people that would have this company's best interest in mind. I was very wary, as I've been part of other startups and watched certain things happen that either hamstringed a company or led to its downfall. It all usually revolves around money, right? The business can last as long as there's money, right? And so when I saw some of those things, I went, I need to truly trust the people around me to be able to let go of everything that I invested emotionally in creating this. Kind of like dropping your kid off at the daycare. You're really vetting those daycare people. And so when Chris came on, and he and I had a relationship in the past, so I knew him from other places and trusted him. And he came on and he said to me, we can do this. This is what we need. I just needed somebody I knew I could trust. And when we brought on those board members and went through everything with them, I feel like I completely trust them, and they are only there to make sure that I'm successful and the company is successful. I needed to build that level of trust, and that took me personally a lot of growth and a lot of conversation with my wife of getting past that. And once I did, I thank God that Chris came on and helped me get through that process.
Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I appreciate you giving a little extra detail there. We always say that the business grows with the owner, right? So when, like you said, that, for you, it was this thing about trust, and maybe obviously some fear associated with, hey, if people come on that I don't trust, that bad things happen. And, but for you personally, like you said, you built that over 2-3 years or however long it was. And then you were like ready. And so once the owner was ready, the business grew. And so it's just it's always very interesting to see how it plays out that way. And of course, that was the scenario for you. Lots of other scenarios with lots of other people that have their own fears or areas where, hey, look, if I could do that, then I think the business would flourish. And so clearly, you worked well. With the hindsight now, you worked, and maybe on purpose, you worked through those things for a few years, and then boom, now you have those opportunities. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I imagine others, owner operators, have gone through the same type of growth or evolution of it's your own company, and how do you give parts of it to others to help you succeed. I can imagine others have had similar experiences.
Yes, I can vouch for the people we work with. That is the scenario. So
good.
What about so thus far in your time with this business, 5 years in, are you where you expected you'd be? Are you further? Maybe not as far. Like how is it going in terms of, hey, I'm not right where we thought we'd be, or is it different?
It's I would say in some aspects I'm further than I ever thought I would be. In other aspects, I feel like I'm constantly behind. because I have so many ideas and want to grow in so many directions that I have to really rein it in and figure out, where we can spend our limited resources and time. So, for example, we do a lot of bringing folks on the market. So you get a pacemaker or a heart valve or a stent that wants to get on the market, and we work really closely with the owners and help them launch that company. And that part is what I'm very, very familiar with, and so I feel very comfortable with that. Then when you're on the market, then we have prior authorization, and so we've got a whole bunch of people. We do thousands upon thousands of patient prior authorizations a year, and that is good. And I'm talking just personally. It's doing great, but for me, jumping over mentally gets a little bit more tough. So I wish I kind of could switch over back and forth. Then there's the political side. So we do a lot of political work, and that has really evolved. And we are going to invest heavily in that this year, because there are so many policies that change at the federal level, again, at the state level, and under a new administration. So, for example, the new administration had mentioned that they want to take out over 800 billion of what they perceive as fraud, waste, and abuse in the Medicaid system. You can imagine that's going to have huge impact on our clients. And so, how do I analyze that situation and speak with politicians around what that means for their constituents, meaning the patients? We'll be growing that aspect, because here we are playing ball all day, and if the politicians demolish the field, we have nowhere else to play. and so spending time on making sure that we have someplace to play continues to evolve and grow. And so there are a lot of Congress people that I meet with, senators I meet with, governors that I meet with about policies, and they're always interested in doing what they believe is the right thing. And I believe in my heart with everybody I've spoken with that they're trying to do the right thing. They just may not appreciate how what they're putting together manifests itself in the actual delivery of healthcare. And so that has been, I wouldn't say surprising, but they just don't have people coming to them telling them what that does. And so we actually have somebody that worked for us who's now working for the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and he was very adamant in making sure that he brings to the leadership of the department how it manifests itself on the local level. And so we'll be spending a good bit more time on that perspective. So kind of all over the board in certain areas, but very clear on where we want to go.
Yeah. So actually, that was kind of my next question is, what's next? So you've had obviously, various levels of success. You've done some decent investing. Sounds like that's paying off. And so, what's the next goal for you, Chris, in the company?
There's, I think of just stakeholders. The thing that keeps entering my mind are the patients who are out there looking for solutions to their conditions. And so keeping that going, keeping new innovations going to help people. I just had a call this morning of a patient in Puerto Rico who, from an insurance perspective, can they come to the mainland to get a procedure because it's not offered down there? So we went through all of that kind of stuff, and knowing that there's somebody in Puerto Rico that I just helped get access to a therapy, that keeps it going, right? And so how do we continue to keep going? And it is really surrounding those innovators and growing. And growing means profitably, right? So we meet the stakeholders and we continue to employ people, and growing into the political arena even more to make sure that policymakers really understand what it takes to deliver healthcare in the US. And as you can imagine, all of this, when you really think about it, comes down to education, right? And so making sure that all of these stakeholders are reading from the same script, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And so insurance companies not appreciating maybe what the medical device company has to go through to launch a therapy, FDA not appreciating what Medicare's needs and wants are, right? And then Medicare not appreciating what the doctor needs to accomplish, and the doctor not appreciating what the hospital needs to accomplish, and the
Hmm.
hospital doesn't appreciate what their governor needs to accomplish, right? So you look at all of these things, and when I have conversations with all these different stakeholders, the amount of either misunderstanding or misperception or just ignorance, and I don't mean that in a negative way,
Yeah.
just a lack of understanding,
Hmm.
it really is then growing the education piece of our business, whether it's online, in person, education. For me, when I think about the ills of society in general, way beyond just healthcare, really comes down to education. And do people really understand how things work, why they work the way they do, and how can we reasonably change things? Not just say, well, we should have Medicare for everybody, or
Yeah.
free healthcare for everybody. And like,
Yeah.
well, that sounds great, but let's
Yeah.
talk about what that means and why we can or can't do that. And it comes back to understanding the history and the culture, and why things are set up the way they are. So then we can actually come up with realistic plans to improve the U.S. healthcare system. So that's where we tend to spend more time, and where I would really like to go to help folks understand and improve our healthcare system. The number of stories, we could be here for days of,
Yeah.
patients we've dealt with. It just, at some point, you're like, I have to do something, right? I have
Yeah.
to. I just can't not. So.
Yeah. So, in going sort of to that higher level of not just the individuals, but looking at the system, the policies, yeah, that's where you can have the
That's
biggest
right.
impact. Yeah. You mentioned all those different, like education around the different stakeholders, right? So, and I feel like, one of the things we talk about a lot with clients is looking for the win-win solutions or the win-win-win solutions. I think a lot of people naturally, when they think, hey, we got to solve a problem, I think they usually think, well, someone has to lose. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't have to have a loser, right? There are solutions, there's creative ways you could, if we think about this in different ways, everyone can win, right? It's possible for that to happen, right? And so, like you said, hey, look, if everyone understands how these different people and what they're looking to, what they want to, how they can win, then great, we could potentially have a solution where everybody wins, and those things are possible. I just don't think a lot of people, unfortunately, aren't. That's not their first thinking
It's,
when they're looking at
you hear that
solutions.
in the stock market all the
Yeah,
time. Well, if somebody, wins in the stock market, that means somebody lost. That's not true, right? I mean, that is truly where that gap is, where people say some winners, some must be losers. No, you're not including the creation of value,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
a rising tide rises all boats. And so
yeah,
um yeah, it's unfortunate when people think there has to be a winner and has to be a loser. That's not true.
yeah, yeah. So good for you guys on you know, spearheading the win-win-win solutions. We're fans of
Trying.
those. So yeah. Um, cool. Well, yeah, appreciate the time today, Chris. I think appreciate all the information and trials and tribulations you're able to share with some of the audience. And any special offers for any viewers that are out there you might want to just put out there if anyone has any interest or
Yeah,
needs or yeah.
yeah, I'd be happy to. I think about people who would be watching this. They may not understand healthcare, but maybe sports. So ESPN has their 30 for 30. And so what I would say is for the next 30 days, if anybody would like to call and chat about US health policy, even if you're not in the industry, 30 minutes, we can schedule a time to talk about it. Or if you're like, hey, I thought of this medical device, or have a friend with a medical device, happy to spend 30 minutes on the phone and have a conversation, or video, have a conversation about what it takes to launch a particular therapy. Or if you're just very interested in how all of this works and just want some education, happy to have a 30-minute call for the next month. Be happy to have that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good value there. Thanks, Chris. 30 for 30. I like it. So good analogy there. Cool. So yeah, appreciate you, Chris. And we'll definitely be happy to get all this information out online so that the viewers and listeners can get their hands on it. And appreciate having you today.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.